Between 1958 and 1962, the British and Americans took part in several nuclear testing operations in the Pacific Ocean at Christmas Island. Christmas Island, a tiny spot in the vast Pacific, witnessed a series of nuclear tests during the Cold War era. The geopolitical tensions of the time led to a significant chapter in human history. Before we delve into the testing, let's set the stage. The late 1950s and early 1960s were marked by intense Cold War rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union. Nuclear weapons were seen as a symbol of power, and both superpowers were engaged in a deadly arms race. The British government, seeking to maintain its nuclear deterrent, decided to conduct nuclear tests themselves. The remote Christmas Island, a British territory, was chosen as the testing ground. But why Christmas Island? What made it an ideal location for these tests? The decision to conduct nuclear tests at Christmas Island was influenced by its remote location, which allowed for controlled testing away from densely populated areas. However, the environmental and human costs raised ethical and environmental questions, leading to international criticism and calls for disarmament. The consequences of these tests were not limited to geopolitics. The environmental impact on Christmas Island and its surrounding areas was severe. The marine and terrestrial ecosystems were significantly affected, leaving a lasting imprint on the island's ecology. It's crucial to remember that real people were involved in these events. The military personnel and local inhabitants experienced the effects firsthand. The health implications of exposure to radiation during and after the tests have been a matter of serious concern. As news of the tests spread, an international outcry ensued. Protests and diplomatic tensions arose, questioning the ethics and consequences of such testing. The nuclear tests conducted at Christmas Island from 1957 to 1962 were part of the British nuclear weapons programme. The tests were carried out by the United Kingdom, which was one of the nuclear-armed states during the Cold War. Here are some of the key details about the nuclear tests at Christmas Island. Operation Grapple, 1957 to 1958. Operation Grapple was a series of nuclear tests conducted by the UK from April 1957 to September 1958. The tests were carried out in the Pacific, primarily at Malden Island and Christmas Island, to develop the UK's hydrogen bomb capabilities. The first successful test of a British hydrogen bomb occurred during Operation Grapple. Operation Hardtack, the first, 1958. The United States conducted Operation Hardtack 1 in the Pacific, and the UK participated in some of the tests. This collaboration marked a joint effort between the US and the UK in the development and testing of nuclear weapons. Operation Grapple X, 1958. Grapple X was a particularly significant test during Operation Grapple, conducted on November 8, 1957. It involved the detonation of a megaton-class thermonuclear bomb, making the UK the third nation, after the US and Soviet Union, to successfully test such a device. Operation Grapple Y, 1958. Grapple Y, conducted on April 28, 1958, was another notable test during Operation Grapple. It was also the first successful test of a British-designed and built hydrogen bomb. Operation Grapple Z, 1958. Grapple Z, conducted on September 11, 1958, marked the end of Operation Grapple. The UK established itself as a nuclear power with the successful testing of its thermonuclear weapons during this operation. Operation Dominic, 1962. The UK participated in some of the US tests conducted during Operation Dominic, which took place at Christmas Island in the Central Pacific. This collaboration between the US and the UK aimed to refine nuclear weapons design and testing methodologies. President John F. Kennedy authorised Operation Dominic in response to the Soviets' resumption of their own nuclear testing after a 3-year moratorium. It was the largest nuclear weapons testing program ever conducted by the United States, and the last atmospheric test series conducted by the US, as a limited test ban treaty was signed in Moscow the following year. The nuclear tests at Christmas Island had severe environmental consequences impacting the marine and terrestrial ecosystems. The health of military personnel and local inhabitants was also a concern due to exposure to radiation during and after the tests. Years after the tests, veterans would reflect on the way they were treated on Christmas Island and how the tests affected their health. with various exposure to radiation without being given adequate kit. Indeed, most of the men were given no safety clothing or equipment as the tests were conducted. A lot of the veterans who are still alive now say they were treated like human guinea pigs. Calls for compensation grew as veterans told their stories and the wider public became aware of the tests decades later, and evidence began to grow of increased cancer rates of veterans who took part and increases in birth defects of their children. Although the government would say there was no direct evidence of this and refused to pay out compensation. In the US, things were different and the government has paid out compensation to its veterans. In 1962, my own father, who in the Royal Engineers was sent to Christmas Island as part of Operation Dominic, he witnessed some of the bombs going off and brought back photos of them. He passed away aged 67 of cancer. After years of campaigning, the British government finally acknowledged the work and sacrifice given by the nuclear test veterans and announced a service medal for the veterans in November 2022. The decision was too late for my father and for many others, but we now have the medal and it rests with his photos and the memories we have. The testing era may be over, but its legacy lives on. It's essential to learn from the mistakes of the past to make informed decisions for the future.